We already went, only for family. Those 4 words shattered something inside me. I'm Judy Warren, 35, a financial manager in Buffalo, and apparently not family anymore. I'd spent $22,000 on that Hawaii trip, thinking sand and sunsets might heal us after my divorce. Instead, they went without me. No call, no photo, just silence wrapped in betrayal. 2 years, $72,000 in total. Rent bills, a car for my sister. I paid for their comfort like it could buy me belonging. But that phone call made one thing clear. I wasn't their daughter. I was their bank account. This time, I wouldn't beg to be included. Have you ever been cut out by the people you love most? Share your story below. It might help someone feel less alone. If family shut me out, I'd learn to stand alone. That night, Buffalo was covered in quiet snow. I sat by the window, laptop open, heart pounding, staring at the truth in black and white, my bank records. $22,000 for their dream vacation. $50,000 more over 2 years. Rent, groceries, utilities, furniture, even my sister's used car. Every transaction a receipt for love that never existed. I scrolled through months of payments. $200 for rent here, $800 for emergencies there, each one chipping away at my savings and my self-worth. I'd canceled therapy to keep their lights on, skipped weekends away to pay their phone bill, all while they laughed under Hawaiian palms without me. My mother hadn't even said sorry. My father hadn't called. Elaine hadn't texted once, not even to lie about it. In that silence, the truth finally sank in. I wasn't family. I was funding family. I leaned back, numb, as my reflection glared back from the dark laptop screen. The woman staring at me looked exhausted, not from work, but from trying to earn affection that was never for sale. I grabbed my phone and dialed Judith Walsh, my financial advisor. She answered on the first ring. "Judith, I need to review my accounts tomorrow morning," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Of course," she replied. 9 o'clock, we'll fix this." When the call ended, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't the desperate daughter anymore. I was the woman who finally stopped paying for love. I'd spent years buying belonging. Tomorrow, I'd start buying freedom. A month later, my phone buzzed with Elaine's name. Her calls used to mean laughter. Now they meant debt. "Judy," she began, syrup sweet. "The landlord's on my case again. Rent's overdue. About $2,000. Can you send it today?" Her tone was light, practiced. The same one she used to get her way since childhood. I didn't hesitate. "Only for family, remember?" Silence. Then a nervous laugh. "What's that supposed to mean?" "We're family, Judy. Don't make this weird." Her voice had that mix of guilt and charm. But this time, it didn't work. For the first time in years, I heard the truth behind it. Need, not love. "I'm done bailing you out," I said, and hung up. My hands trembled. But not from fear. From clarity. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank app. The automatic transfers stared back at me. The invisible cords that kept me tethered. $200 every month for rent. $300 for her car insurance. $200 for their phone bill. I canceled them one by one. Each confirmation received popped up, like tiny sparks of freedom. When the last one disappeared, I exhaled. I wasn't their safety net anymore. Next, I called Ms. Judith Walsh. "Judith, I need to lock my accounts. No more shared access." She didn't ask why, she already knew. "Come in this afternoon," she said. "We'll make it official." At the bank, the papers waited. New codes, new security layers, alerts for every login. "You're taking control," Judith said softly. "That's not easy." For the first time in months, I smiled. "It's necessary." As I signed the last form, I thought about how many times I'd tried to buy peace, with checks, with apologies, with silence. Not anymore. When I left the bank, the air felt different, sharper, cleaner. The city hummed around me, cars sliding through slush, windows glowing gold against the gray. Somewhere, a saxophone played faintly from a diner. It sounded like freedom. For the first time, I walked without rushing, without calculating what I still owed. Every step felt lighter, as if the pavement itself forgave me. I passed my reflection in a cafe window. The woman looking back wasn't broken. She was rebuilding. Each breath steadier, each step freer. I wasn't chasing love anymore. I was protecting peace. I slipped my new bank card into my wallet, and with it, the person I used to be. The fixer, the provider, the fool, began to fade. They'd built their lives on my money. Now they'd have to live without it. The next morning, cars pulled up outside my building. Doors slammed, muffled voices. I peeked through the blinds and froze. My parents, Elaine, and a man in a suit clutching a briefcase. The doorbell buzzed, sharp, insistent. My pulse jumped. I already knew this wasn't a social visit. I opened the door just enough. "Judy, we need to talk," Elaine said, her voice syrup over steel. The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, attorney for the Warren family," he said crisply. "Your family is concerned about your recent financial decisions." "Concerned," I repeated, my voice flat. He adjusted his tie. "They'd like to discuss your financial obligations." Obligations. The word hit harder than any insult. Elaine crossed her arms. "You can't just stop helping us," she said. "We're family, you owe us." My mother nodded. "You've always taken care of us, Judy. Don't turn your back now." My father looked away. "We need that money to get by," he muttered. "Be reasonable." The air thickened with guilt and expectation. The same trap, dressed as love. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I straightened. "I don't owe you anything," I said quietly. "You made that clear when you left me out." Elaine's face twisted. "You're being selfish." Mr. Hayes raised a hand. "Ms. Warren, we can handle this legally if needed." "Then take it to court," I said, and shut the door in their faces. Their voices rose outside, angry, overlapping. But I didn't listen. I turned the deadbolt. The sound clicked like punctuation on the past. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then again, louder. I finally answered. "Buffalo Hardware," a man said cheerfully. "You called about new locks and security cameras yesterday?" "Right. I'd made that call after the first sleepless night." "Can you send someone today?" I asked. "Absolutely," he said. "We'll have a technician by noon." At 12:07, Mike arrived. Stocky, calm, efficient. "Want to keep visitors out?" he asked, scanning the old door. "Something like that," I said. He worked fast, installing a heavy deadbolt. "A door camera, motion sensors linked to my phone. This will catch anyone who comes near," he said. I watched the red light blink to life. It looked like protection, like peace. When Mike left, I locked the door behind him and sank onto the couch. For a long moment, the apartment was silent. No voices, no pleading, no guilt. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow against the window. Each flake melted on the glass, like proof that nothing stays frozen forever. They'd brought a lawyer to my doorstep. That wasn't family. That was war. They wanted control, but they just woke up my defense. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Buffalo courthouse. Cold marble. Echoes of other people's fights. Mine had just begun. Mr. Robert Lawson, my attorney, waited by the bench. "Stay calm," he said quietly. "Truth's on your side." Across the room sat my parents and Elaine, their lawyer, Mr. Hayes, whispering in their ears. They looked polished, rehearsed, as if betrayal could be powdered over. Judge William Carter entered. Everyone rose. My heart stayed heavy. Mr. Hayes began first, his voice smooth as glass. "Your Honor, Ms. Warren has demonstrated erratic financial behavior. She cut off her family's support abruptly, leaving them in hardship." He motioned toward Elaine. She dabbed at fake tears. "Judy's not herself anymore," she said. "She's unpredictable. We're worried." My father added. "She's always been generous, but lately she's unstable." Their words sliced deep, not because they were true, but because I'd once believed they cared. Mr. Lawson rose slowly. "Your Honor, my client is not unstable. She's independent." He handed the judge a thick folder. Inside my pay stubs, performance reviews, bank statements showing stable savings and clean records. Then came our witness, Dr. Barbara Clean, the psychiatrist. Her tone was clear, unwavering. "Ms. Warren is competent and mentally sound. Her decisions are rational, boundaries, not breakdowns." Hayes tried to twist her words. "Would you say stress could impair judgment?" "Stress," she said calmly, "isn't incapacity." A ripple passed through the courtroom. For once, I wasn't the one trembling. Then it was my turn. I stood, hands steady. For years I paid their rent, their bills, their comfort. I thought love meant sacrifice. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But when they excluded me, I realized I was never a daughter. I was a donor. I lifted my chin. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's survival. Mr. Hayes objected. "Speculation." Judge Carter waved him down. Overruled. The rest blurred, closing arguments, papers shuffling. The cold hum of the courtroom lights. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was sharp, decisive. "The plaintiffs have provided no evidence of incapacity." Case dismissed. Relief surged through me. A rush so pure it left me dizzy. Across the aisle, Elaine's jaw clenched. My father stared at the floor. My mother looked like she'd swallowed her own pride. Mr. Lawson leaned close. "You just won your life back," he whispered. Outside, sunlight poured over the courthouse steps, turning the snow to gold. For months, I'd walked through storms. Now I could finally feel the warmth. This wasn't just a victory. It was closure. As I stepped into the wind, Buffalo's chill stung my cheeks. But for once, I smiled. They tried to take my freedom, and proved I was stronger. 3 months after the trial, I stood in my new apartment, watching the Buffalo skyline glow like forgiveness. The air felt different here, quieter, lighter. No echoes of slammed doors or whispered guilt. Just space, mine. The walls were still half bare, but every inch carried peace money couldn't buy. I brewed coffee, the smell filling the room, and smiled at how small joys felt sacred again. I'd spent the morning unpacking. Books, plants, one framed photo of me on a Hawaiian beach. I kept it as a reminder. Never pay for love that excludes you. A text pinged from Janet, my best friend. Dinner tonight? You owe me details about your new freedom. I laughed. She'd been my anchor when everything fell apart. Now she wanted to celebrate. That night, over pasta and wine, she raised her glass. To choosing yourself, she said. I clinked mine against hers. The sound bright and clean, no undertones of obligation. I told her about my new plans. A solo trip to Italy next spring. A cooking class. A savings fund named Future Joy. For once, every dollar I earned had purpose, and it was mine. Sometimes, I still thought of my family. I'd heard Elaine was juggling 2 jobs. My parents had downsized, learning what real limits felt like. I didn't wish them harm. But I no longer mistook pity for love. Standing by my window later, I thought about everything they'd tried to take. My money, my confidence, my voice. And how, in fighting back, I'd reclaimed something priceless, myself. I whispered into the quiet. My worth was never their debt to collect. Outside, buffalo snow began to fall. Soft, unburdened, cleansing the world in white. You don't owe your peace to people who profit from your pain. If you've ever had to walk away from people you loved just to save yourself, tell me in the comments. Your story might be the one someone else needs tonight. And if this story found you at the right time, please like, subscribe, and share. You're not alone in reclaiming your worth.
Colin, you're not invited anymore. That was it. 5 words, no apology, no warning, just silence wrapped in a sentence that folded my entire chest inward. The message blinked on my screen, the notification still bold. I sat frozen in my tiny Portland studio, my legs tucked under me on the second-hand couch I'd bought from a moving sale. Outside, rain pressed against the window in sheets, sirens howling in the distance. Inside, I stared at the message like it was a foreign language. A single blinking cursor blinked back from my unfinished to-do list. I had been finalizing headcount confirmations, double-checking the cake delivery, reviewing the seating chart she'd asked me to color code. 8 months of my life, and $12,248.43 to be exact. I know because I tracked every penny. Not because I expected anything back. At least, that's what I told myself. I just wanted to be useful, included, needed. Maris had hugged me at Christmas and said, "You're my sister. I want you by my side." For a second, I believed it. I hadn't been by anyone's side in years. Not since Mom married Reed and started calling us one big blended family like it was a charm spell to fix the quiet distance that always hung in their home. But when Maris got engaged, something shifted. She looped me in. I made spreadsheets, booked vendors, paid deposits when her budget mysteriously stopped stretching, flowers, photographer, rehearsal dinner, live musicians for the ceremony. Jess, my coworker, asked me once over burrito bowls, "Why are you bankrolling someone who didn't even come to your birthday last year?" I'd laughed, because she's family. I should have known better. I picked up my phone, scrolled back up to the message, tapped her name, typed, "What do you mean? Not invited 3 dots." Then nothing. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the cursor kept blinking. I reached over and shut my laptop. I stood up and went to the bookshelf where the rose gold binder sat neatly labeled Maris and Eli Wedding Planning. My fingers rested on the spine. Then I pulled it down and opened to the first page. It started on Christmas Eve. Maris handed me a wrapped box, long and flat. I thought it was one of those luxury scarves she always got from Reed's assistant, but when I opened it, I found a white wooden hanger with Maid of Honor scripted in gold wire. "You're serious?" I asked, blinking. She threw her arms around me. "Of course. You're my sister." Technically, we were half-sisters, but that was the first time she'd said it like it wasn't a technicality. I drove home that night with the hanger on the passenger seat like it might shatter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt chosen. The next day, I bought a rose gold binder. It had dividers for vendor contacts, payment logs, seating charts, everything. I labeled it Maris and Eli Wedding Planning and slid her engagement photo into the front pocket. It started small. A spreadsheet here, a reminder email there. Then she asked if I could help with vendor quotes. Then coordinate fittings. Then be at every cake tasting. It wasn't just help. I was running the whole thing. Every Saturday, I drove 2 hours from Portland to their suburb outside Salem. I skipped weekend trips, canceled plans, took Zoom calls from my car so I wouldn't miss Maris's dress appointment. The bills piled up fast. When the florist's upgraded arrangement bumped the price by $1, $200, I covered it. Just for now, I told myself. When Eli's parents bailed on covering the rehearsal dinner, I put it on my credit card. "Wait, you're paying for this?" Jess asked one afternoon at work, eyes wide over her coffee lid. "Not all of it," I mumbled. "Just the things they couldn't afford." Jess raised an eyebrow. "You're buying love. That's expensive." But it wasn't about love. Not really. It was about being needed. About being inside the circle for once, not orbiting around it. I didn't care about the binder's cost. It sat on my bookshelf like a trophy I'd finally earned. And I kept flipping the pages past the budget tab and into the final week's checklist where the line next to confirm RSVP list was still highlighted in yellow. 2 weeks before the wedding, the silence started. Maris stopped answering texts right away. Our usual back-and-forth questions about headcount timelines, floral pickups started going unanswered for days. I'd send 3 messages and get one-word replies. When I called, she'd answer with that syrupy tone she used with distant relatives. "Hey, Em," she'd say, using a nickname I hadn't heard since we were teenagers. "Everything's fine. Just wedding stress, you know." But her voice didn't sound stressed. It sounded like someone trying to hang up before something spilled out. Then came the bachelorette weekend. I hadn't heard anything, so I assumed they canceled it, until Instagram told me otherwise. Maris, her sorority friends, matching hats, champagne flutes, pink balloons. "Nashville, here we come," the caption read. I stared at the photo for a full minute before I noticed what was missing. Me. I messaged her trying not to sound bitter. Didn't realize the bachelorette was still on. "Oh, it's just my college girls," she replied. "Didn't want to overwhelm you with travel." I stared at the screen. She knew I would have gone. I'd driven twice the distance just to taste cakes she didn't end up picking. Still, I let it go. Told myself it was fine. Told myself maybe she needed space to balance old friendships. Then the voicemail came. "Callan, hey, we need to talk about some changes. Can you call me?" I called back immediately. No answer. I waited an hour, tried again. Still nothing. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Colin, you're not invited anymore." I sat there blinking, hands shaking. I texted back. "What do you mean, not invited? I'm your maid of honor." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Mom and Reed think it's better if you don't come. Too much family drama lately." Family drama? What family drama? I called. This time she picked up. Her voice was clipped, almost rehearsed. "It's not my decision," she said. "Then whose is it? Mom thinks your presence might make people uncomfortable." Uncomfortable how I asked. "Because I'm single, because I live alone in the city." There was a long pause. "It's just easier," she said finally, "to keep the peace." I was quiet for a beat. "Whose peace are you keeping?" She didn't answer. The line went dead, and I sat in the dark phone still in my hand, heart thudding so loud it drowned out the rain. The next morning, I drove to Mom's house. I pulled into the driveway just after 6. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, neatly trimmed hedges, pale shutters, a doormat that said, "Welcome" in a font, so cheerful it felt sarcastic. When I knocked, it took a full minute before the door opened. Jenny stood in her robe mascara, smudged beneath one eye like she hadn't slept. Her face shifted from surprise to something else, guilt maybe, or dread. "Callan, what are you doing here so early I didn't wait to be asked in? Explain to me why I'm uninvited from Maris's wedding." She stepped back wordlessly, and I followed her into the kitchen. The place was spotless staged like it was waiting for a realtor. Every surface gleamed. It felt fake. We sat at the white quartz island. She poured herself coffee, not offering me any. "It's complicated," she began. "It's not," I said flatly. "You either believe I deserve to be there or you don't." She sighed, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous tick I remembered from childhood. "Reed's family. They're traditional. When they found out about your situation, they made some comments." I stared at her. "What situation?" "You know," she said softly. "Living alone? No partner. City lifestyle. It's not what they're used to." My mouth went dry. "So you're ashamed of me being single and independent?" "No," she said quickly. "Not ashamed, just nervous. There's already been tension with Eli's parents, and Maris was afraid that I held up a hand. Afraid I'd ruin the optics, embarrass her somehow." She looked down at her mug. "It's just for the wedding, to keep things smooth. Afterward, you expect me to come back like nothing happened." "No," she whispered. "I just hoped you'd understand." I stood up. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the fridge. "I do understand," I said, perfectly. Her eyes welled, but she didn't speak. "Where is she?" I asked. "She's with Reed, at the office, finalizing caterer stuff." I didn't believe her. Maris never handled vendors. That had always been me. I left without another word and drove downtown Binder in the passenger seat like a witness. And sure enough, her car was already parked outside. I found them in the conference room, all gathered around a long table covered in printouts and color-coded markers. My markers, my seating chart. Maris looked up first, her expression caught between panic and guilt. "Callan." "What is this?" I asked, walking straight to the table. "You're finalizing the seating chart without me." Reed didn't flinch. "We're trying to move forward with the event given the recent shift." "You mean the part where I was erased?" I shot back. Eli stood beside Maris, eyes flicking from me to her and back again. He didn't look surprised, just tired. I pulled the rose gold binder from my bag and dropped it on the table. 8 months, dozens of weekends, over $12,000. And now I'm an inconvenience. Reed leaned back in his chair. "Colin, no one asked you to spend that money." "You chose to." Maris's eyes widened like she hadn't expected him to say it so plainly. "They weren't gifts," I said. "They were contributions, commitments." "You asked me to be part of this." "That doesn't mean you own it," Reed said calmly. "This is about what's best for the family." "Whose family?" I asked. "Because it sure as hell isn't mine anymore." Eli cleared his throat. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "this wasn't my idea." I told Maris this wasn't right. Maris said nothing. I looked at her, really looked. She couldn't meet my eyes. That was when it clicked. I wasn't just excluded. I'd been used. Not as a sister, not as a bridesmaid, but as a placeholder. They didn't want my presence. They wanted my silence, my skills, my wallet. And now that I'd served my purpose, they were replacing me with nothing but cold formality. I picked up the binder and walked out. I had one more stop to make. The venue smelled like eucalyptus and lemon polish when I walked in. Patricia, the manager, greeted me with a bright smile that dimmed the moment she saw my face. "Callan, perfect timing." "I was just about to call. I need to cancel everything under my name," I said. She blinked. "I'm sorry." I set the rose gold binder on the counter, flipped it open to the first tab. "Photographer contract signed by me, deposit paid with my card. Floral arrangements upgrade requested through me, invoice emailed to my address. Ceremony musicians, my booking, my deposit. The rehearsal dinner venue that was $3,000 straight from my savings." Patricia looked stunned. "The wedding's in 6 days," she said softly. "I know." We moved to her office. She pulled out a thick folder and we sat side by side, flipping through every contract, highlighting every booking with my name on it. Some deposits were non-refundable. Others could be canceled with penalties. I didn't argue. I just pointed, signed, moved on. By the time we were done, nearly half the wedding had vanished. "The bride," Patricia started. "Can find replacements," I said. "She just won't be using mine." My phone buzzed once as I stood. Then again. By the time I reached the front door, it was vibrating constantly. Rachel, Reed, Jenny. I didn't answer. I tucked the binder under my arm, nodded politely, and walked into the late afternoon light. There was nothing left to plan. The calls kept coming long after I stopped looking. How could you do this? You're ruining her big day. You always make it about you. Then panic. The florist backed out. The photographer says the contract's void. What do we do now? I read them once, then archived the thread. The day of the wedding came and went without me. I made banana pancakes, played the same record twice, cleaned my apartment until the floors squeaked. I didn't check social media. I didn't check anything. But later that evening, a text buzzed from a number I didn't recognize. It was Janet, my mom's old friend, the one who always called me sweet girl and slipped me extra pie on holidays. Thought you might want to see these. I'm sorry. 3 photos followed. Maris in a simple white dress holding a small bouquet. The flowers looked like someone picked them up from a grocery store cooler. The arch was bare. No live musicians. The chairs were mismatched. No rehearsal dinner posts, no grand celebration. Still, she smiled in every shot. But in the last photo where Eli was looking at her, Maris was looking somewhere else, over his shoulder. Her smile was fixed, her eyes searching. Like maybe she finally noticed what was missing. I put the phone down and poured myself another cup of tea. And when it was quiet again, I pulled the rose gold binder off the shelf, set it on the table, and opened a new tab. 3 weeks after the wedding, I heard a knock on my apartment door just after noon. When I looked through the peephole, it was her, Jenny. She held a paper bag in one hand and a tired look in the other. "You can't ignore us forever," she said when I opened the door. "I can try," I replied, stepping aside anyway. She walked in slowly, taking in the mismatched furniture, the thrifted rug, the stack of client folders on the coffee table. Her eyes landed briefly on the rose gold binder before she sat down. "I brought lemon muffins. Your favorite right, I didn't answer." She sighed and set the bag down. "I made a mistake." I waited. "A few, actually. Big ones." Still, I said nothing. "I should have stood up for you. Told Reed that if he couldn't accept you, then maybe he couldn't accept me either. But you didn't." She nodded. "I didn't. I was scared, of conflict, of starting over again. I thought, if I kept the peace, everything would stay intact." "At whose expense?" I asked. She looked down. "Yours?" Silence filled the space between us, the sound of the fridge kicking on the faint traffic below the window. "We're in counseling," she added after a moment. "Reed and I. Trying to repair what's broken." I crossed my arms. "What about Maris?" Jenny hesitated. "She's dealing with guilt. She knows she hurt you, but she's not ready to apologize." My jaw tightened. "She asks about you sometimes," she added. "Wants to know if you're okay." I didn't know what to do with that. So I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 mugs of tea, and handed her one. We sat quietly sipping, not pretending everything was fine. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was the first time in years she saw me as more than something to explain away. Spring came early that year. I moved into a new apartment, still modest, but bigger. 2 windows instead of 1, and in the morning, the light spilled across my kitchen table like it had something to prove. My freelance business had picked up. Clients started referring other clients. Projects grew. For the first time, I wasn't chasing invoices or apologizing for my rates. I was booked. The rose gold binder still sat on the shelf, but now it held client proposals, branding timelines, and launch strategies. I'd replaced seating charts with marketing plans, RSVP trackers with revenue goals. It was still organized by color. Still mine. I started seeing someone too. A photographer named Lane. Quiet, sharp-eyed kind in the way that doesn't ask for attention. He never asked about my family, but when I told him, he listened like it mattered. When I mentioned the wedding, he didn't offer cliches, just squeezed my hand and said, "Their loss." Mom and I had coffee once a month. Neutral ground, a bookstore cafe halfway between us. No Reed, no Maris. Just us talking about work weather books we never actually read. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something, and it no longer felt like I was proving I deserved to be there. I was just there, growing, blooming anyway. The way some flowers do even in soil that tried not to hold them. The night of the ceremony, I wore a deep green dress and carried nothing but a small clutch and my name. No weight, no binder. When they called me up, I walked onto the stage, steady and quiet. The applause felt real, not out of obligation, not because someone needed a favor, but because I'd earned it. As I reached the podium, I glanced across the crowd. That's when I saw her. Back row, simple black dress, no flashy jewelry, no entourage. Maris. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't smile. She just watched, like someone who wasn't sure if they were supposed to be there. I turned back to the microphone and gave my speech, short, sincere, and mine. Afterward, I moved through the reception, accepting congratulations, clinking glasses, laughing with people who had met me through my work, not my family. My phone buzzed once in my hand. You deserved this. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I deleted the message. No reply. No drama. No need. I slid the phone into my bag and turned back to the conversation, someone already asking about my next project. And I smiled, not for who was watching, but for who was finally free. I placed the binder on the shelf beside old sketchbooks and photo albums. Not out of anger. Not to forget. Just to say that part of me is finished. It used to hold every detail of someone else's dream. Now it holds a quiet reminder of how far I went to be chosen and how much further I've come since choosing myself. They never sent the invitation, but they gave me something better. They gave me back my voice, my time, my peace. They gave me the space to become someone who no longer begs for belonging because I built a life I fit into all on my own. I sat at my desk, the late afternoon sun streaking across the wood, and unwrapped a new set of stationery. Clean pages, soft weight. The first sheet would hold a client proposal. The second, a handwritten note to someone who saw me before I had to prove it. There would be no save the dates, no place cards, no RSVP trackers. Just stories worth writing. And the steady growing sense that I didn't miss the celebration I had, simply moved it somewhere they could no longer touch. The buzz pulled me out of sleep like a slap. I grabbed my phone, squinting against the blue light. It was 3:12 a.m. A bank alert. I tapped it open, my thumb trembling before I even knew why. Balance, $42,317.08. My breath vanished. I sat straight up in bed, eyes fixed on the screen, hoping I had misread the number. I blinked. Still there. 42,000. Gone. I opened the full transaction history with shaking fingers. A car purchase, a motorcycle, a lump sum mortgage payment to an address I recognized too well. None of it mine. I tried to tell myself it had to be a mistake, identity theft maybe, but I already knew better. That address, that mortgage, that car, they all traced back to the same place, my parents. I called my father. The line rang twice before he answered on speaker. Music thumped in the background. I could hear my mother laughing light and carefree like they hadn't just gutted my savings. "Hey, what's going on?" he said as if I'd called to catch up. "My account's overdrawn," I said. My voice was tight, too calm. "It's maxed out." "Did something happen?" A pause. Then his voice came through, annoyed, like I'd just interrupted his dinner. "You're always so dramatic, Mireya. The family needed help. Your mom's got medical bills, your brother's truck broke down, and the mortgage was behind. We couldn't just let everything fall apart." I sat there in the dark phone, to my ear, stunned that he said it like it was obvious. "Why didn't you ask me? I managed." "We don't need to ask," he snapped. "You owe us." In the background, my mom laughed sharp, dismissive. "What were you going to do with that money anyway? Buy yourself some candles. We had better plans." There was a silence after that. A thick, final kind of silence. I swallowed hard and said calmly, "Then don't ever call me again." I ended the call. I stared at the ceiling while the sound of their party leaked through my phone's speaker just for a second longer, then faded. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, hands cold, heartbeat slowing as a strange calm settled in. Then I got up, turned on my laptop, and started logging into every account I had. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That night, my silence didn't come from shock. It came from decision. I sat cross-legged on the floor laptop, opened the glow of the screen lighting up my living room. One by one, I pulled up every account that had my name tied to theirs. No emotion, no trembling hands this time. just quiet, focused motion. First was the mortgage. They couldn't get approved, not with my mother's credit. So 4 years ago, I'd put it under my name temporarily. I'd been told it was just until they got back on their feet. I paused for a breath, then clicked Suspend Autopay. The confirmation email hit my inbox like a final stamp. Paused. Then the truck my brother's. I hadn't co-signed. No, I'd opened the loan myself so he could get a better rate. I submitted a fraud dispute and marked it as unauthorized use. I didn't explain. I didn't feel the need to justify what they had never asked permission for in the first place. After that, it got easier. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. I had been paying for it all. Not just theirs mine, theirs sometimes even distant relatives. My name, my card. I changed the passwords and closed the subscriptions. Electricity, gas, Wi-Fi. My mother's utilities had been under my account for years because she couldn't get through the application. They could scream later. I'd done enough explaining in my life. I didn't owe a preface. Somewhere around 4:30 a.m., I stopped and let the stillness wash over me. I stared at the wall and remembered a moment I hadn't thought about in years. I was 14. My mom had come into my room crying because the electric company was about to shut everything off. I had begged the salon next to school to let me sweep up hair after class, minimum wage under the table. I'd handed my mother every crumpled bill in my backpack that month, thinking I was helping. Thinking love looked like sacrifice. I didn't realize then that sacrifice when demanded stops being love. I wasn't raised. I was raising. They had depended on me for so long they forgot I could walk away. They mistook my consistency for permission. But I had never given consent to be used like this. I had never signed up to be their financial safety net, stitched into every corner of their lives like duct tape holding up a house no one else bothered to maintain. My strength didn't need to look like yelling. It looked like withdrawal. It looked like locked accounts, frozen payments, closed doors. And I wasn't done yet. The calls started coming just after sunrise. By 7:00 a.m., the voicemails were stacking like bricks in a wall. First, my mother's voice sharp and indignant. "Mireya, what did you do? The mortgage isn't going through. The bank says it's suspended. We trusted you." Then my father angrier. "You've crossed a line. You think this is funny the truck's gone. Repossessed. You better fix this." I didn't respond. I sat on my kitchen stool phone face down on the counter, letting each message land and disappear into digital air. An hour later, the tone changed. "You've always been the generous one," Mireya Mom said in a voicemail that came after 10 missed calls. "What's happening to you? This isn't like you." Then another. "We needed help. Why are you acting like a stranger?" The guilt came packaged neatly wrapped in old roles. The good daughter, the reliable one, the backup plan. I picked up my phone only when it buzzed with a message from Layla, my cousin. "Your mom says you shut off their gas. They're freezing." "Is that true?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. "I didn't shut it off," I wrote. "I just stopped paying for it." There was no answer. Just the 3 dots like she was typing, then nothing. By mid-afternoon, screenshots from the family group chat started trickling in Layla again, quietly forwarding without commentary. The name of the thread had been changed to "Without Mireya." One aunt. "She thinks she's too good for us now." My mother. "We did everything for her." An uncle I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Ungrateful kids are the worst kind. The story they told themselves was clean and easy. I had turned on them. Forgotten my roots. Got a little money and thought I was better. No one asked how many birthdays they skipped. No one asked whose card paid for every holiday dinner, who fixed broken cars, bought last-minute flights, covered co-pays, or picked up the phone in the middle of the night to transfer rent money. That part never made it into the group chat. The silence from Layla was louder than I expected. No defense, no reply, just screenshots and distance. I thought I might feel bitter, but all I felt was confirmation. And then the voicemail came, the one that made me pause, the one with a tone I hadn't heard since I was a child. The voicemail played twice before I could make myself listen. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone like it might burn through the comforter. Finally, I pressed play. Mireya, it's your mom. Her voice was brittle, like it might break under the weight of what she had to say. Your dad fell, broke his leg. We're at county. No insurance, and they won't schedule the surgery without some kind of payment. They're saying we have to put something down today. We know you're upset, but this is serious. Please, just call us back. She hung up without saying, I love you. That wasn't surprising. That word in our family was never spoken when it mattered only when things were going well or when they wanted something. I held the phone in my lap and stared out the window for a long time. The morning was gray, overcast, like the world had taken a deep breath but hadn't decided how to exhale yet. I thought about calling. I even picked up the phone, hovered my finger over her number. The guilt rose quickly, familiar, practiced automatic. That voice in my head, sharpened by years of expectation. Be the bigger person. You're the strong one. You're the only one who can fix this. But something held me back. Not anger. Not pride. Just memory. I walked to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I clicked open the folder I had named History. Inside, digital evidence of a childhood spent patching holes in their lives. Screenshots of overdraft fees, bounced checks they promised to cover but didn't. Scans of loan papers I co-signed. Photos of Christmas dinners paid for with my card. A receipt from the steakhouse where they'd gone the night of my last birthday, the one they forgot charged to my account. It wasn't the money that had broken something in me. It was the pattern, the ease, the belief that my silence was consent. I closed the folder and opened my banking app. I wrote a check not to them, not to the hospital, but to myself. I labeled the transfer peace fund. I would move it into a separate account the next day. A promise to my future self, I won't drain myself to keep someone else comfortable ever again. The phone buzzed again. This time a text from Layla. Your mom said you won't help, that you're really letting them go through this alone. I stared at the message and typed back slowly. I hope he heals, but I won't hurt myself again to fix them. No reply, just the gray bubble blinking, then vanishing. And when the doorbell rang the next morning, I didn't need to ask who it was. They showed up just after 9. At first, I thought it was a delivery, 2 quick knocks a pause. But then came the voice, Mireya. Open the door, I walked to the peephole, slowly already knowing. My father stood on the porch, pacing like he couldn't decide whether to knock again or kick the door in. My mother sat on the front step, sobbing loud enough for the whole street to hear her leopard print sweater hanging off one shoulder, hair unbrushed, mascara already smudged. I didn't open it. I didn't say a word. I watched them through the narrow lens of that little glass circle while the coffee in my hand stayed warm. The mug I drank from had been a gift from them 2 birthdays ago. White ceramic with gold cursive favorite daughter. I remember unwrapping it while they argued in the background about whether I could afford to cover the property taxes that year. They had called me that favorite when I was useful. Now the title rang hollow. Open the damn door, my father shouted. You're ruining the family. I sat on the couch, calm, coffee in hand, letting their voices blur into background noise. 12 minutes. That's how long they stayed. Pacing, yelling, begging, threats mixed with pleads. Accusations tangled with apologies that didn't sound like apologies at all. Mireya, please. He's injured. We're your parents. How could you do this to us? The door shook under my father's fist once, maybe twice. But I didn't flinch. Yelling without respect is just air. And I'd stopped letting air move me. When the porch finally went quiet, I opened my laptop and pulled up a draft email I'd written 2 nights earlier. I read it one last time, then hit send. Subject, full disconnection. To my lawyer. It was all there: power of attorney revoked, shared health insurance, canceled family phone plan, deactivated, every utility transferred out of my name, every financial tether severed. I made sure the language was precise. No access, no fallback, no confusion. They had never seen me as a person, just a source. A battery that kept charging their lives, a name that made things go through, a card that never declined. But I had reached the limit. I closed the laptop, rinsed out my mug, and let the silence stretch across the kitchen like a fresh sheet. And when I showed up to Ava's wedding the next weekend, I walked in wearing black satin not to mourn, but to remind them I wasn't theirs to grieve. I arrived just as the music changed and the doors to the reception hall opened. The lights were warm, the tables glowed under strands of soft white bulbs, and laughter spilled out into the cool air of the evening. I walked in alone, dressed in black silk that hugged me without asking for permission. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't blending in. I had chosen black because I wanted them to see me, but not as they remembered. Their eyes found me within seconds. My mother's jaw tensed before she forced a smile. My father stiffened beside her, adjusting the sleeve of his rented tux like he needed something to do with his hands. I didn't stop walking. I moved through the room with calm steps, nodding politely to distant cousins and old neighbors, none of whom knew the story behind the silence. I sat at a table near the back with Ava's friends, the ones who had only heard of me in passing, the career cousin, the one who sent generous gifts and rarely came home. Ava had insisted I be there. She called me 3 times to make sure. "You've always shown up for everyone else," she said. "I just want to be the one who makes space for you." My mother passed my table just before the salad course. She slowed down, touched the back of my chair lightly. Her hand shook. "You look different," she said, voice low. I turned to meet her eyes. "I am." She opened her mouth like she might say more, but I raised my hand, gently stopping her without touching her. "I'm here for Ava, not for you." She nodded once. Whether it was understanding or disappointment, I didn't care. I watched her walk away, back toward the part of the room where I no longer belonged. My seat didn't come with expectations. It didn't demand anything from me except presence. Later, during the toasts, my father raised his glass. He looked directly at me like he was waiting for some cue. A smile, a nod, a silent truce. I didn't give him one. I lifted my water glass with the others, but kept my eyes on the bride. Peace doesn't come from pretending nothing happened. It comes from accepting everything that did and not letting it define the person you choose to become. When the dance floor opened, I kicked off my shoes and let myself be pulled into the music. Ava grabbed my hand and spun me in a half-turn, laughing like we were kids again before everything got complicated. And when the night ended, I left without saying goodbye. It's been a year. A full year since they drained my account and called it family. Since I closed the accounts, cut the cords, and stopped answering their emergencies. Since I started choosing quiet over obligation. My new apartment is smaller, cleaner. No echoes of footsteps I never invited. I run my own firm now, just me, a few contractors and clients who respect boundaries. I log off when I say I will. I sleep without flinching at late-night vibrations on my phone. I started therapy 2 months after the fallout. I haven't stopped going. This year, on my birthday, my phone stayed silent. No calls from them. No fake apologies. No passive-aggressive texts disguised as concern. For the first time, I didn't brace myself for disappointment. I didn't expect anything. I was folding laundry in the late afternoon when the knock came. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps. I opened the door to find Ava standing there with a cake and a half smile. "I know you don't do big things anymore," she said, "but I thought maybe we could just sit." The cake had no writing on it, just candles. She pulled 2 out of her coat pocket and stuck them in, lighting them with a shaky flame. We didn't sing. We didn't make wishes. We just sat across from each other at my little table, watching the candles flicker like proof that the world was still turning. She looked at me and whispered, "You were never the problem, Mireya. You were just the first to escape." I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. We just breathed, no expectations, no performance. And that silence, the one I used to fill with giving and explaining and fixing, felt for the first time like something whole. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. They say family doesn't keep score, but they did. Every ride I gave, every bill I paid, every late-night phone call answered, logged in their memory as proof that I owed them more. I wasn't their daughter. I was a balance sheet, a backup plan. I used to tally it too, but only in my heart. Quiet math in the background of every gathering, every holiday, every time they asked for one more thing. I didn't stop giving because I ran out. I stopped because they never noticed the cost. So I closed the account, Now the guilt still comes sometimes. It knocks gently, pretending to be something else: duty, kindness, forgiveness. But I don't open the door. I let it pass by like weather. I've learned that healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the steady hum of a quiet apartment, the sound of your own breath without pressure pressing down on it. Sometimes it's lighting a candle with someone who sees you, not what they can get from you. I stopped chasing blood ties. I started choosing soul ties, the ones who call to check in, not to cash in, the ones who don't measure my love by how much I'm willing to lose for them. They still talk. My mother still posts her vague updates. My father still plays the victim in stories where I'm the villain. But I don't answer to their version of me anymore. I belong to me now, fully, finally, freely.